you wanted the best, you've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. It's Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. Well, there are only things that makes it official. Welcome to the big show. For over 16, going on 17 years, we've been bringing the Chris Voss Show, over 2,200 episodes. The CEOs, the billionaires, White House presidential advisors, the Pulitzer Prize winners, the smartest people who share you their stories and journeys of your life, as we like to say on the show. Stories are the owner's manual to life. They help let us know that we're not alone. They give us guidance of people who've maybe gone through similar circumstances and the way that they've fixed their issues and found a way through the cathartic times that we all kind of go through. And just knowing that you're not alone in the universe and somebody might have a blueprint to save you is one of the reasons we do the show. It helps to lift the world into a better place, and sometimes the darkest times, the darkest moments we go through, there it is. Boy, I just read that like it was an ad, and I just made it up right off the cuff. You do it so well, too.
You get the perfect voice for it, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you. It's how I get all the girls on Facebook dating. I just leave them a voice message, and they're like, "Holy shit, it's Barry White."
That's the Bumble one too?
Yeah. If I send text messages, they're just like, "Who's this guy?" But if I do the voice, they're just like, "Hey, wait, here's my number." Anyway, true story. Serious, I'm not kidding. It's the one gift God gave me. The rest is, the rest of me is a complete mess. Anyway, we have an amazing young lady on the show. You can hear her in the background. We're going to be talking to her. She's from the Ukraine too, so we'll be talking about some of her life experiences, international order, and all that different craziness that's out there in the world. Today we have Katya Dunko on the show with us today. She is a writer, potent. Give me that in your words.
Multi-potentialite. So that's the scientific name for, professional student, jack of all trades, somebody that has many passions.
I'm adding that to my Tinder profile.
Yeah.
And she's the author of a new book that will be forthcoming. You can sign up to get the news now. It's called I Drank From The Nile. It's a raw and unapologetic memoir about breaking free from addiction, toxic relationships, and generational pain. Her journey began in Cairo, Egypt, where she left with nothing but 2 bags and her daughter, determined to rebuild her life. Through her story, Katya hopes to inspire others to confront their struggles, find resilience, and rewrite their futures. She spent the last 6 years writing her memoir and managing her family's properties while working as a part-time realtor and transforming a historic ranch on the Truckee River into an events venue. She holds a bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of Nevada, Reno, and is pursuing her nursing license. She lives in Reno with her husband, daughter, and 2 cats, enjoys music production, DJing. Yeah, she is a potentialite. I'm working on that, learning that word. Cooking and painting in her free time. Welcome to the show, Katya. How are you?
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Thanks for coming as well. Give us any .coms. Where do you want people to get to know you better on the interwebs?
Mostly I'm known on TikTok. So it's Katya_Dunko. I have a 14-part series about my story in Egypt. Also, I have my website as well, myname.com. You can join the wait list, and on Instagram that I post, mostly from my journey as a writer and little snippets from my book.
And your book's not up on Amazon. Do you have a release anticipation yet, date, or where are you at with that project?
So right now I'm querying agents. I have had a couple of referrals. With the holidays, you got to wait for a while to get any answers from anyone. But I got that out. If I don't get a response, I'm gonna self-publish on Amazon and join my wait list. You'll get to know all that when that comes out. But it's ready to go. I'm just can't wait to share my story.
Shopping the story, as it were. And I love the title. Where does the title originate from? Tell us a little bit about that, if you would.
So I drank from the Nile. They have a saying in Egypt that once you drink from the Nile, you're destined to come back. And that's what happened to me. I traveled there in 2012 with an ex-boyfriend that's now is a pretty famous YouTuber. And then we were there during the revolutions. And I drank from the Nile then. Then I came back in 2014 and ended up living there.
Ah,
Yeah.
Oh, quite the adventure in multinational. I remember the Egypt uprising and the, what did they call it when a lot of the Arab authoritarian countries were falling? The Arab Spring, I think.
Spring, yeah.
Yeah, and now we've got the extension of it. Syria just fell. For those of you watching 10 years from now on YouTube, we're in December 2024. Give us some more details about your journeys. How were you raised? I mean, what were some of your influences? You clearly are pretty comfortable in the international traveling front and understanding, how that all works.
Yeah, so as of date, I have been to 33 countries.
Wow.
I've lived in 4. Originally, obviously, from Ukraine, and we immigrated with my mom. She was actually one of those mail order brides from the 1-800 number.
You're serious? You're not putting it on, right?
Yeah,
Wow. There you go.
yeah. So she went in as a joke with her friend, and then this guy from Alaska picked her. So we immigrated from Kiev, Ukraine, to Alaska when I was 8 years old, and I grew up.
Is there more snow or is there less snow? I know Ukraine has winter, right?
No, we have less snow, but it's kind of like the East Coast. There's a lot of humidity.
Like East Coast snow.
Yeah, really cold. But Alaska has a lot of snow and not enough daylight. So
yeah, that's a hard probably move to make when you're a kid. Did you have a hard time with it?
Yeah, I remember actually we tried to get in through Mexico City, to, go to the embassy there, and then we were sent back. But I remember landing in Anchorage, and my stepdad had a truck, and then I've never seen automatic windows, and I leaned on it with my elbow, and it was like, and just seeing all the mountains. So I remember, it was a culture shock, feeling carpet. We grew up poor in Ukraine, and Soviet blocks.
Yeah,
we're all sardined in a 540 square foot apartment block. So that was, seeing the mountains, and I fell in love with nature and growing up there. So it was beautiful.
I think Alaska is probably one of the best places to fall in love with nature if you really love nature, maybe. Unless you don't like getting eaten by bears. That's probably
Or if you don't like eating by bears. But then my sister that was, she's born from my American stepdad. She's a super city girl. So if you're born with that and you grew up in Alaska, we had nothing to do. We had not
get eaten by bears. That's what you do on weekends.
Bear, moose, and the moose, their eyes don't reflect in the headlights. That's why there's a lot of moose killings on the road. So
they then end up killing people because they hit them with their cars. Is that what you mean?
People hit moose with their cars, and that's because their eyes don't reflect. But
oh wow. I know deers do because I lived in Utah for quite a few years. We hit deers. But yeah, I had a similar problem where I grew up in California on the beach in San Diego. And then when we were 12, my parents, I'm pretty sure they mixed some psychedelic drugs because that's the only reason I can find to move to Utah. And we woke up from a hangover and we were in Utah. I mean, should people really move here voluntarily? Anyway, that's a joke, people. Utah's nice. I don't know about that. But anyway, I teased the Utah. But, having to wear a coat all the time, I was like, what is this coat business?
From San Diego? Yeah. No.
Why do I have to wear a coat? What the hell? Why is it cold here? Why do I can't wear shorts anymore? What place have we moved to? And we can't drink Coke anymore? What the fuck? Anyway, that's my story. I'm sticking to it. So tell us more about how you went from Alaska to Egypt, where your story starts.
Yeah, so in Alaska, it was hard for my mom to adjust to the life of, just being in America, the language. I didn't have a good relationship with her really much ever. Mm-hmm. So in Alaska, kind of introduced me to, as we're talking about, there's not much to do there, painkillers.
Oh.
So my backstory is I was a closet addict for almost 10 years. Mm-hmm. And it's, holding on to that. I was highly functioning. That's another, topic in my book is how I overcame that in Egypt. As you don't know that you are an addict until you realize, I take a pill every day. And it's just, it's just a pill. My back hurts, this hurts,
Mm-hmm. And so it was opioids?
Opioids, yeah. Wow. So painkillers. Yeah. And so that was something
those are hard to get off of too.
Yes. And like I said, I didn't understand that that's what that I was an addict. for so long, and then I started to realize how much it affects my, my relationships. So after Alaska, I moved to here in Reno. I got a full ride scholarship. So despite all those, despite my addiction, I still did really well in school, and I got scholarships and came to Reno and studied abroad, studied here, and then met that first love, and we traveled a lot. And that's when that 2012 trip, I fell in love with Egypt. And 2 years later, I decided to come back.
Oh. Well, let's talk about this a little bit. You start on painkillers. You don't think it's a problem. There's a lot of people that can highly function as addicts. And I think that kind of masks or deceive them. Like, you're like, I don't have a problem. I'm functioning. I have a job. I'm doing the things everyone else seems to do. I got a little mother's little helper sort of thing going on. Yeah. I drink alcohol, not out of addiction, but just kind of abuse. It was fuel. At the end of my entrepreneurial nights, I still had more work to do and more paperwork, and so I'm like, there's sugar, and I don't think I really thought about it at the time. I just knew that vodka would relax me, and I could get more work. I could suddenly have energy and get more work done because I was relaxed. And I didn't realize I was just basically injecting sugar into my veins, and a lot of other crap too. And you think you're functioning well. I even thought it made me sleep better. I've talked about this a lot on the show. Turns out it doesn't really make you sleep better, but I thought it did because I had a pretty ADHD brain. But it's deceptive, huh?
Yeah, it's silent. It's what I always had an excuse. It made me feel normal. So when I took my pills, I didn't feel the high. I just felt normal. And I never had a lot in my system at one time. And I write a lot about this in my book. It's kind of I introduce it, I have this perfect world. I have this relationship with this world traveler, and we have all these adventures, yet I'm harboring this little addiction, painkiller thing. And I justified it for so long. Like, it's just a little sliver, I just crush it. I just put it in my body, and then we're good. We're good to go. My past is behind me. I'm numb, constantly numb. And,
was there an underlying thing? I mean, maybe I'm jumping ahead to when you got off it. Was there an underlying thing that you felt like you were numbing? You felt like you were medicating? Was there something that was under the surface there that was the bugger?
Yeah. So just as we're kind of now we're talking through the book. So I introduced myself, what my perfect life, and I have this addiction. And then that follows just a very turbulent and neglectful childhood, obviously. And sadly, my mother was the one that actually introduced me to these pills. Oh, wow. And she's been, the driving force behind that. So
my parents sometimes drove me to drink, but I think that happens to all kids.
Yeah. So it's this, this generational pain. My mom had that addiction. She passed it on to me, and that's how I got into them.
Wow. So you go to Egypt. Tell us about Egypt, and then you got married, I think, and you had a child.
Well, at the end, yeah. I went to Egypt first to teach English, kind of experience life on my own, be this worldly, independent woman. And I was, again, with the traumatic childhood, we all have these traumas, but I was a people pleaser. So I wanted to be better for this man that I thought I was going to marry, that we traveled so much together. So I said, look, hey, what if I live in Egypt for a little bit? I'm going to figure myself out. I'll become this worldly person. And maybe when I come back, we can build a family together. And that was something he agreed with, and he thought that would be a great thing to do. But I went in there with, vulnerability and then this addiction. So this is where I really realized how much it affects me. Egypt is a scary place. It's being a woman, a white woman there. People you get catcalls, harassers. I don't know if you want to look it up, but it's number one country for harassment. 98% of women have been harassed there.
There was a CNN, I believe it was a CNN reporter who was raped gang raped, I believe, it was in one of those uprisings against Mubarak. And
I
forget her name, but it was horrific.
Yeah, so us, expats, but I'm coming in, landing in the heart of the Arab world with this just dazed constantly. You know, I don't even know what I'm doing anymore there. So that's when I get into a lot of trouble. I meet not really nice people. I actually met the ex-president's grandson, and I don't want to reveal his name because you got to get the book. But as of 2021, I think he was put in jail for also gang raping. So I was involved with some pretty bad people there. Mm-hmm. And I realized, you know, I got to get out. This is not, I'm going to end up, you know, really hurt. So this is when I asked my boyfriend here in Reno for help. I was like, can you get me out of this country? I want to come back home, you know, and I was going to confide in him and tell him that, you know, I have this addiction, but I was so afraid that he wouldn't love me. So my memoir is for people that, you know, are going through things like that. They don't feel self-worth in their problems, and they want just to hear a story that where it can get you if you don't seek help and things like that.
Yeah. You know, we had Nina Burleigh on the show several years ago for her book, and I can't remember I think it was about Trump and the election, but she had written extensively when she was at CNN stuff about this. There was a 22-year-old Dutch journalist who was gang raped in Tahrir Square.
Tahrir, yeah.
No, I'm not pronouncing that correctly. Thank you. And then there was Laura Logan, Dutch journalist. And yeah, I'm just Googling this now, and it says gang rapes, the dark side of Egyptians' protests. You know, when you're a tall, blonde, white woman in the Middle East, you really stuck out. You really stick out.
Yeah, I did my best to conceal. I mean, I wore, you know, long maxi skirts. I wore really baggy clothes. I even tried to veil myself. And this is me, you know, getting to work and teaching English. They noticed how the rapping was wrong. And I try to hide basically in a city of 15 million people. And at that point, you know, in my life, I don't have a good relationship with my parents. I can't call anyone really for help.
This isolates you, right?
It isolates you. And then my addiction just keeps getting deeper and deeper.
Yeah, because you're medicating that you don't have resources. You know, we interviewed Clarissa Ward, the CNN chief international correspondent, several years ago on the show for her book. And we talked about that because she told these stories in her book about being in the Middle East, being in Iraq during war. I just recently saw her in Syria, and she sticks out like a sore thumb. I think she's 6-something foot tall. She's very blonde and very pale, and I'm like, how do you know, you're trying to hide who you are, and you're trying to infiltrate different areas, sometimes under the cover of the enemy, or, you know, she's the press, but you know, she's in the part of the enemy's area where they cut people's heads off that are white, and I'm like, somehow you blend in, and it's I wouldn't do it. I'll be honest with you, I'm a man, I wouldn't do it.
It was a bad decision, and that it was fueled by, you know, my really heavy addiction. I was like, oh, I'm gonna do something really bold, and I'm gonna move to Egypt and survive, and, you know, teach English and be this awesome person. That you know, the harassment there was just. There's a moment I write about. So I lived with 2 other Ukrainian girls. So you can't live with another man in Egypt unless you're married or have roommates or any of that stuff. So foreigners kind of stick together. So it was me and 2 other Ukrainian girls, my roommates. And we had this landlord, Mr. Harish, and he came in, he would come in every month to collect rent, and he would use his key, walks in, and he sets a big bag of money, just cash, on the table. And he was trying to buy us as his bride every time. He's like, how much for you to be my bride? I was like, Mr. Harish, we go through this every month. No, thank you. You know, it's like, oh, I'll bring you more money. I'm just.
How much money are we talking about here? Because I'm single. I can be bought. No.
Oh, we were bride. Yeah. I don't know. In Egyptian pounds, gosh, back then, now it's so diluted, but back then, I don't know, maybe 10 grand, 20.
Do you still have his number? No, I'm just teasing.
Maybe. No, but it's just, you know, it's coming in through everywhere. I can't get away from this city. I'm just like, I got to go home. But where is home? You know, where do I go home? Ukraine, I haven't lived there for a while. I'm on this rocky relationship with my boyfriend here that I thought we were going to get, you know, married and everything. So I just start kind of deconstructing myself. And I put that in as every good engineer, you know, they have to take apart the machine to find the broken pieces and see how it operates. So I
love that analogy, by the way. Do you write about that in your book? That is
so I started my deconstruction. I'm like, okay, I wanted to be weak. I was like, let my life be going, in the wrong direction. I almost wanted that. It's very detailed, so it's very raw that I write about the human condition, and it's lethargic was for me to actually deconstruct myself.
Mm-hmm. And so you go through that. What drags you to the point of eventually where you have to kidnap your daughter out of Egypt, and how you did it? If you want to tease a little bit out of that, we want people to buy the book, of course, but if you could tease out a little bit.
So I get in trouble with this ex-president's grandson, and I'm hiding out from him. I mean, I get into a very dangerous situation. I'm hiding from him. I had to dye my hair. I'm looking for a hero. So there's a hero that comes in, and I didn't know, but he would be my future husband. He gets me out of Egypt to the States. And we kind of go for 2 years, not back and forth. He'd come travel and, visit me. And then eventually, I don't want to give it out, but how I came back to Egypt and to marry him there.
Wow. So you actually go back to Egypt after kidnapping?
Yeah, after all of this. And he knew, it's crazy.
You must have felt pretty secure with him then.
He was my hero in a lot of things with my mom, it's a train wreck. It's a train wreck. And every chapter, it's a page turner. Like, how are you going to get out of this situation? It's about this resiliency. It's about, and when I was writing with my editors, I was like, gosh, they're not going to like me for the first few chapters. Because what are you doing? What are you doing? But it all, comes back in the end. So anyway, so I have this, he's my hero. I go back to Egypt. We actually have a normal life. His family accepts me. I'm not this expat. I belong to an Egyptian family. Wow. His family's really nice. His father's very high up in the government. They love me. They take me in. I have a maid. I live in this bubble. I lived in this place where I just saw the pyramids, in front of me. Wow. Beautiful place.
Wow. And so you go through this whole, would reinvention or saving of yourself be the right words to use, maybe?
Yeah. So transformation, I guess, as I would say. Yeah. And what eventually I learned is that I'm harboring all this pain, and it's because I have this pain and this victimhood of poor me, my life, and all of this thing happened, that I keep making the wrong choices for myself and my future. And that's what eventually I do learn at the end, this breaking this generational pain. So when we get married, he leaves us about 10 days after she's born, my daughter. Wow. And tells me that I can never leave Egypt, that you are to stay here and raise her. And basically, I would be like just a wet nurse. That's how I was treated. So I went from being their favorite to pretty much a wet nurse. Wow. And I was scared. I had no bank accounts there. I'm a foreigner. I can't get a bank account. I had some money in savings. I don't know what to do. It was the lowest, but the most resilient moment of my life is I planned out our escape and made it, and decided to become the mother I never had to. So when I came here, I thought, what do I do with all this pain? How do I move forward? Having kidnapped, I don't know what my repercussions are. I don't know if he's going to come fight for me in court. I am sure I just kidnapped my daughter, Yeah. So I made a promise that I will not pass this pain on to my daughter. I cannot, because that was what my mother did to me. And I lived with this victimhood. So,
and it's all going to be in your forthcoming memoir.
Yes.
Still learning to speak, evidently, after 16 years on the phone. So do you have a cover for the book yet by chance? Probably still.
I had a few that I wanted. I can send you some that I prototyped, but that they always change if it's traditionally
most authors don't even get to pick their cover sometimes.
Yeah.
It's an unknown fact most people don't know. And with the big publishers, they sometimes pick your title and your cover. But you have a great title. I really love it, and it's seated in the lore of Egypt and all that sort of good stuff. So as we go out, tell people where they can onboard, give people the final pitch out to get in touch with you, and find out more about your story as it emerges.
Yeah. So this, my story is for anyone that, is wanting to find their worth or struggling to find their worth and their place in this world. It's an inspirational story, transforming of motherhood, of what you can do with this generational pain. You don't have to hang on to it. So if this is something that interests you, you can reach me out on my website, katyadunko.com, sign up for my wait list or newsletter. And then I'm heavy on TikTok. Yeah, if you're more interested about my story, I have it all there in details, and on Instagram. I'd love to connect. Hopefully get that story out sooner than later, and to inspire, everybody to reclaim and rewrite their life, because it's never too late. And I have 19 chapters to prove it to you that you can do it.
You can do it, as I like to say in the movies. And if you're a publicist, check out what she's doing and all that good stuff. See if we can get this story lifted. This is one of those stories that people need to hear. I'm sure it's a. I mean, I don't mean to minimize it, but it's a journey a lot of people go on through with addiction. I don't know how many people are. I don't know what the stats are on addiction. I live in Vegas. You live in Reno. We kind of know there's a larger group of addicted people around us, and it's an issue. It's an issue. And, it's like we've probably had 200 or 300 psychologists on the show, and trauma, childhood trauma, I mean, this is all stuff that people really need to resolve in youth and deal with.
Yeah. And not pass it on. That was my biggest. Yeah. That was my biggest. I'm like, I cannot pass this on to my daughter, because hurt people. And then it's just this cycle. And I hope my story inspires, somebody going through whatever they are, to just break that cycle of pain. Mm-hmm.
Break the cycle, folks, because we need to do that. Thank you very much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing your story. Sometimes these are hard to share. Sometimes they feel a little, you're like, I really want to share. Does anybody really care about my story? But the great thing about sharing our stories is there's always someone out there who needs to hear our story, and they need to hear it from us. And that was an important thing. Someone told me, he was an author one time, and they said, people need to hear your story, Chris. You won't know who that person is, but they need to hear it, and they need to hear it in your words. And so you need to, be there for them. And I was like, wow. And it really is powerful. And sometimes you never meet those people. I've told stories on Facebook about some of the crises I had with my dogs and different things. And it was amazing how just almost a decade later, people come up to me and they go, hey, that thing with your dog that you wrote that one time in 2013, yeah, that resonated with me. I realized that I didn't have closure with my father's death or my dog's death. Or, it was just amazing how far it went. And I just was like, wow. Okay.
My TikTok, so what I did by taking my daughter out of Egypt is an anomaly. The statistics is that the children get kidnapped to the country and are forced to stay there. It gets very hard to get out, because I don't have legal custody of her there because I'm not Muslim. Wow. So I had women reaching out to me on Instagram, stuck in Dubai. How do I get, they need support. I'm stuck here with my kid. This is a really big issue in the Middle East. Children are stuck there, and I just took the risk and got out. And maybe, like you said, years down the road, I'm not bashing on the countries at all. Like I said, my daughter's half Egyptian. I do love it. It's just that there are a lot of cases like this, and I had 2 people I'm talking to, Egyptian women that want, that are getting out with their kids. And so if I can help it, even 1 or 2, that's good.
Change the world. And generationally, it's more than helping 1 or 2 people too. I mean, that's the thing people want to remember. It's, those people have kids and all that stuff. So thank you for your story. Thank you for what you're doing. We really appreciate it.
Awesome. I look forward to seeing this stream too. So thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1, the TikTokity, and all those crazy places on the internet. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you next time. And that should have